Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back. Unless you're new, in which case I would say welcome for the first time. I make these little videos about films I enjoy and want to share. I put up anywhere from 1 to 3 a week, depending on what's going on. Usually they veer towards horror or maybe some throwbacks to the 80s or 90s or any films that I feel like they don't really have enough notice, in my opinion. But I do mix it up every now and then, so be sure to subscribe if you enjoy this one, and check back for other titles, from time to time. Hit that little bell icon to get notifications for when I put up that new content, so you can hop in during that first hour, which, along with sticking around to the end and sharing everything around, really do help out the channel quite a bit. Okay, speaking of mixing things up, about 1.5 years ago, I did a review for a movie called Inheritance Italian Style, which I will link to in the closing screen. It was an indie film. I really enjoyed it, and it got me wanting to do more indie film reviews on here, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. But this film was one that I always kept in mind, and it's from 2001, Gypsy 83, starring Sarah Rue, Burkett Turton, with appearances by John Doe and Karen Black, and it is directed and written by Todd Stevens, who before this had directed The Edge of 17. So the synopsis for this film is as follows. Two young misfits head for New York City to celebrate their idol and muse, Stevie Nicks, at the Night of 1,000 Stevies. Along the road, in order for them to escape their painful pasts, they must discover their strengths and learn self-acceptance. So, another aspect for these characters, of course, that Sarah Rue's character is also hoping to track down her mother, who had left her and her father several years earlier in 1983, which is where she gets that part of her name, Gypsy 83. When Gypsy and Clive, who is the other misfit here, are looking up some info about, one of their idols, Stevie Nicks, they come across this Night of 1,000 Stevies event that's happening in New York City. And there's a picture of a woman on the ad, or on the webpage about it, that looks to be Gypsy's mother. At least Gypsy is convinced of that. So they decide to go on this road trip to attend this event, hopefully so Gypsy can perform and start her journey towards stardom. And but most importantly, for her to track down her mother. And at its core, most basic sense, that is what it is. It's a road trip movie about these two misfit characters who find themselves along the way. So if you like those kinds of road trip movies, you'll definitely enjoy this one, I feel. So some other aspects of this, of course, is that both of these characters are outsiders. They're dark and gothic. They don't fit in well, especially considering that they're in Sandusky, Ohio. Clive being gay is, a factor as well, since he, for all intents and purposes, is just a kid who's still learning about his sexuality and his sexual orientation, on top of his sense of self and style, and all that really has him feeling like an outsider. There's actually a kind of sad but telling line that he delivers about how, he's gay, but he has nothing in common with other gay people. He couldn't care less about Judy Garland or Stonewall, and that being gay is just one small aspect of who he is as a person overall. So, on this journey of self-discovery, it almost seems like there's also this fear that coming out on the other side, he's still going to be an outsider with no group, no home, nobody that he really fits with. All he has is Gypsy, and honestly, all she has is him, since they just kind of understand each other and have never found anybody else, that are kind of, on that same wavelength. But throughout this trip, they meet some other characters, some other really interesting ones. One in the form of a woman played by Karen Black, who's a former recording artist and putting on small shows now. They also come across an Amish kid who's on his Rumspringa, where he's kind of getting out there to see more of the world and what there is to experience outside of the Amish community. And even some college kids who are RVing, cross country and hazing new pledges for their fraternity along the way. Basically, like, they are the polar opposite of the kinds of people that our leads would have actually even, spent any time with. But they have their ups and downs along the way in some very dramatic situations and conversations about what one's place is in the world and how they fit in, what they want out of life versus what they want to avoid. But ultimately, even though there is an age gap between Gypsy, who's early 20s, maybe 25, and Clive, who's only 18, they both go on this trip to this event to New York to find Gypsy's mother. And they are kind of all on, they're both on this journey of self-discovery, with each other. And very quickly, I attached to both of these characters very early on in the film. They were very well written. I felt like the actors brought something very personal to these roles, along with what the writer-director Todd Stevens brought as, looking at his other work and some of the focus that work has had, this one appears to be very personal to him as well. I first came across this title a few years after its initial release, which was probably, a few years after it was kind of making the rounds at various film festivals, I would imagine. There's a very small cinema not far from me that was playing some non-mainstream films. So this one finally came out to those theaters around the time that Napoleon Dynamite was kind of having its first initial release before it hit wide release. And with both those films, I thought it was really great to see something that was a bit different from what we usually get outside of the LA, Dallas, and New York, release areas, where films like this are usually shown and usually don't make it much further past, especially over 20 years ago. And, this one really stuck out to me because of how it portrayed LGBT characters and people who identify as goth. It did it so in an open way and relatable way where even if you don't identify as LGBT in any way or goth in any way, you can likely understand where these characters are coming from, what their wants and needs and hopes are, and actually care about their journey that they're on, both physically, making sure that they make it from Ohio to New York City, as well as all the different things that they experience and how they grow along the way. Now, obviously, I'm leaving out a lot regarding the ending. I figure with a road trip style film, one of the big aspects is how that journey comes to an end when they kind of get to their destination. So, no spoilers. But overall, this is a very nice story with some interesting characters in it that are very relatable, written very well on this journey of, cross country of self-discovery that's more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out this latest video of mine for Gypsy 83, which at the time of this recording is available on some ad-based services such as Roku and Tubi. Currently it's not on Blu-ray yet. The DVD is out of print. I believe it goes for around $40 to $50 sometimes. But, if it's of any interest to you, head on over to Tubi or Roku and check it out. And anyways, that's all that I have for this quick little one here for Gypsy 83. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I will see you in the next one.